I never thought I'd be the guy writing some long, messy story about betrayal, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years. We've always been the picture of a stable couple, quiet life, decent jobs, 2 kids, normal domestic stuff. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, we fought sometimes like any couple, but I figured that was just life. Nothing prepared me for the day I found out she was screwing around behind my back with her damn rehab counselor. It started a few months ago. I had a stroke, a pretty bad one that left me temporarily paralyzed on my right side, speech slurred, the whole 9 yards. The recovery process has been tough, lots of therapy, lots of frustration. Lisa was supposed to stick by me, help me get back to normal, or so I thought, but things changed. She became distant, snapping at me for the smallest things like I was suddenly an inconvenience. She'd go out a lot more, claiming it was therapy sessions or support groups, but I could tell she was hiding something. Her phone would buzz constantly, and she'd sneak to the other room to answer it. I'd ask her who was texting her, and she'd brush me off, call me paranoid. That's when I started noticing little things. Her phone screen lighting up late at night, or her deleting messages like she was covering her tracks. One day, I was trying to set my therapy schedule on her phone because she kept saying she was updating it for me, and I got curious. I'd never really looked through her stuff before, but I was desperate to understand what was going on. I unlocked her phone when she was in the shower, just a quick peek, and that's when I saw it. Her messages with a number I didn't recognize. I recognized the name. His name is David, and he's the rehab counselor she's been going on about. But the texts weren't about therapy. They were flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up, about sex. It was explicit, dirty. I couldn't believe it. How could she? After all I've been through, after all the crap I've had to deal with my health, she's out there screwing around with her damn counselor. My stomach dropped. I looked at her messages. Her excuses, the way they joked about keeping it between us and not telling Mark. I felt like I was hit by a truck. I wanted to scream, to throw her phone across the room. Instead, I sat there, stunned. My heart pounding, blood rushing in my ears. How long has this been going on? Was she ever really with me or just pretending? I've never felt so betrayed in my life. The woman I loved, the one I trusted, had been lying to my face this entire time. It was like a punch in the gut every time I thought about it. When she finally came out of the shower, I confronted her. I held up her phone. Her face changed instantly. She looked guilty, but she tried to act like I was crazy. "What are you doing with my phone?" she snapped. I didn't waste time. I showed her the messages, watched her reaction as she saw her own words. Her eyes widened, then she started stammering. "It's not what you think," she said, trying to laugh it off like it was some joke. "It's just a silly flirtation, nothing serious. You're overreacting." But I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. They weren't remorseful, just defensive. She kept insisting it was nothing, just some stupid flirt, that David was just a friend who got a little too close. She told me she'd never cheated, never crossed the line. I could tell she was lying, but I also knew the truth was right there on her screen. I was furious, but mostly crushed. Inside, I felt like every piece of my world was crumbling. I had just survived a stroke, spent months fighting to get better, only to find out the woman I loved was sneaking around with someone who was supposed to be helping her. How could she lie so easily? How could she look me in the eyes and pretend everything was fine? I wanted to believe her excuses. I wanted to yell, scream, break something. But mostly, I just felt empty. Betrayal cuts deep, especially when it's coming from someone you trusted with every ounce of your being. That moment marked the beginning of a long, painful road ahead. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way anymore. She kept insisting it was just a stupid mistake, that David was just a distraction because I was so fragile, like that somehow justifies his texts and her lies. She cried, tried to apologize, said she was sorry for hurting me, but that it was never about love, just loneliness and a stupid weakness. I wanted to believe her. Hell, I wanted to believe there was some way to fix this, to shove all this aside and pretend it never happened. But I knew better. The trust was shattered, and I could feel it crackling in my chest like ice breaking apart. The next few days were brutal. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies. Every moment she tried to make me feel guilty, I just felt angrier. How could she do this to me after everything? After I had a stroke, after I'd been struggling to recover physically and mentally. She kept telling me she loved me, but her actions said otherwise. I kept thinking about that text exchange, how she was sneaking behind my back, sharing secrets, flirting with a guy who was supposed to be helping her with her support groups, but was really just screwing her. And the worst part was I couldn't confront her again without losing it. I was boiling inside, but I knew I had to be smart if I wanted to get answers, or honestly, if I wanted any chance to salvage what was left of us. One night I stayed up late, digging through her phone again. I wasn't just looking for confirmation anymore. I was trying to understand her mindset. Why would she do this? What was she getting out of it? I found more messages, some that she had deleted, but I managed to recover. They were more explicit, more desperate. She even talked about how David made her feel alive again, how her sex life with me had become boring, and she missed the thrill. That was a slap. I mean, I've been lying here, unable to do much physically, and she's out there craving some guy's cock. I know I should have been angry, but mostly I just felt betrayed. Deep down, I wondered if I was enough anymore. That's when I decided I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit around and watch her lie, pretend everything was fine. If she was cheating, I wanted to know how deep it went. So I set up a hidden camera in the bedroom. I wanted proof. I needed to see her real side, not just the words she was spinning to me. I felt sick doing it, like some kind of creep, but I also felt like I had no choice. My recovery was supposed to be about healing, but instead I was spiraling into an abyss of betrayal and hurt. The camera was small, discreet, and I placed it right where I knew she'd be, her side of the bed. I told myself I was just covering my bases, but honestly I knew I was trying to catch her red-handed. A few nights later, I hit play on the footage. I'd never felt so sick in my life. There she was lying in bed, texting David again, masturbating, talking dirty. I recognized her voice, her body language. It wasn't just words anymore. I saw her craving him, the way she touched herself, the way she looked at her phone like it was a lifeline. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd throw up. How could she? How could she turn me into some kind of cuckold? I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I wanted to scream, but instead I just sat there watching her betray me with every fiber of her being. The woman I loved, the woman I fought for every day, was out there screwing around with some guy just to get her kicks. It made me question everything: my health, my marriage, my sanity. The next morning I woke up feeling numb. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to confront her again, but this time I had proof. I was ready to face her, no matter how much it hurt. I'd never felt so alone in my life, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with this, not without some kind of fight. So I called her in the dining room, told her I had something to show her. Her face turned white when I pressed play on the footage. She tried to deny it, of course, said I was stalking her, that I was making things up. But I just looked at her and said, "You're a damn liar, Lisa. I saw everything." Her excuses fell apart fast. She said it was just sex, just a mistake, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was bored, lonely. I didn't believe her anymore. It was like hearing the same bullshit over and over, but I knew the truth now. And that truth was ugly. After seeing that footage, everything changed. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved and trusted, was lying there in front of me, staring at her own betrayal in the form of that video. Her face was contorted with guilt, but her words were still trying to spin it all away. It meant nothing, she kept saying. Just sex, a moment of weakness. I remember feeling a deep, searing rage mixed with this crushing sense of betrayal. I'd spent months trying to recover from my stroke, fighting to get back some semblance of normalcy, and now I realized I'd been fighting for nothing if she was out there screwing some guy behind my back. I didn't know what to say at first. I felt this storm swirling inside me: anger, heartbreak, humiliation, and a bitter sense of loss. My hands were trembling, my vision blurred around the edges. I wanted to yell, scream, to shake her until she told me it was all some sick joke, but I knew that wouldn't help. I just stared at her for a long moment, trying to process how someone I loved could do this to me. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she look me in the eyes and tell me she was sorry, that it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything? She kept crying, saying she was sorry again and again, looking for some kind of mercy. But I wasn't feeling merciful. I felt sick, just totally drained. I told her she had to leave, that I needed space, that I couldn't be around her anymore. She begged, tried to say I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing, but I knew better. That night I packed a bag and slept on the couch. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I couldn't sleep in the same room with her. Not anymore. It's funny how quickly things spiral out of control. The next day she kept calling, texting, crying. She told me that David was just a rebound, that she didn't want to lose her family, that she made a mistake. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd end things with him, that she'd do anything to fix this. I didn't believe her, not anymore, because love isn't supposed to look like that. Love isn't sneaking around, sexting another guy, lying to your face. That's just betrayal dressed up as some kind of excuse. I told her she had to choose me or him, and I knew she wouldn't pick me. Not after what I saw. The emotional toll was crushing. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every time I thought about her, about what she'd done. I kept replaying that footage, that moment when I saw her touch herself, talk dirty, crave him. It's like this sick obsession, but I couldn't stop. I felt humiliated, like I was some kind of cuckold, a guy who couldn't even satisfy his wife anymore. I wondered if I was enough, if I ever had been. That realization cut deeper than the stroke ever had. I'd fought to get my body back, but my mind was breaking from the inside out. The worst part was knowing I couldn't undo any of it, no matter how much I wanted to. I started thinking about what I should do. Should I fight for her, try to fix this mess, or just cut my losses and walk away? Every fiber of my being told me to leave her, to get away from the betrayal. But part of me still hoped. Hopes that maybe, just maybe, she'd come back and admit she was wrong, that she'd fight for us like I was fighting to recover from my stroke. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. Once trust is broken that way, it's almost impossible to repair. And I was too exhausted, too wounded to keep pretending everything was fine. I spent days obsessing over what to do. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to find some way to fix this, to make sense of the chaos inside me. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I was done. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, not knowing if she was cheating again, not knowing if I could ever trust her again. The pain was too much. I realized I had to make a choice, whether to fight for my marriage or to walk away and salvage what I could of my dignity. It was the hardest decision I'd ever faced. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to walk away, but I knew I had to try, for me, for my sanity, for whatever shred of pride I had left. The days that followed were a blur. I stayed in that state of limbo, oscillating between anger and despair. My mind kept circling back to her words, her tears, her lies. I couldn't believe I'd fallen so far, that the woman I thought was my partner, my best friend, had been sneaking around with a guy who was supposed to be helping her recover. It felt like every moment I had fought so hard to regain after my stroke was being erased by her betrayal. I still remember sitting on that couch, staring at the blank wall, feeling completely hollow inside. One thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't stay in the same house while she was there. Every time I saw her, I felt this mixture of rage and heartbreak. I needed space, clarity, time to think, so I told her she had to leave. Her face crumpled and she begged me to reconsider, swearing she'd end things with David, saying she'd do anything to fix what she'd broken. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I needed time to figure out what's best for me, that I couldn't be around her right now, not after what I saw. She kept crying, saying she loved me, that she'd never do it again, but I couldn't believe in her words anymore. That night, I stayed alone in the bedroom, trying to sleep but failing. My mind was spinning, replaying everything, the texts, the footage, her crying, her lies. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. My trust was shattered and I could see the pieces scattered all around me. It was like I was living someone else's nightmare, one I couldn't wake up from. I wondered how I could ever fix this, if I even should. Could I forgive her? Could I move past this? Or was this the end? The thought of losing everything we built, everything I fought so hard for, was almost too much to bear. Over the next few days, I made some decisions. I knew I needed to get to the bottom of this, to know if she'd truly cut contact with David or if this was just the beginning of something more. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay while she was still out there, possibly screwing around again. So I installed more cameras, this time in the living room and maybe even her phone, whatever it took. I wanted evidence. I wanted to see if she'd try to sneak around again, if she'd slip up, if she'd show her true colors. I felt guilty for spying, but I also felt it was necessary. This was about my survival, my dignity, what little I had left. One afternoon, while she was out meeting friends, I went through her phone again, pulling every message, every call log, every hint of her secret life. I found more evidence, texts with her friends, plans she'd made, even some explicit messages with David that she'd hidden deeper in her trash folder. I felt like I was unraveling a web of lies, and each new discovery made my stomach turn. I had to remind myself that I wasn't just angry, I was hurt, betrayed, and humiliated. How long had this been going on? Was I just some fool she was pretending to love? Or had she decided I was no longer worth her respect? All these questions haunted me as I sat there, staring at her messages. That evening, I finally reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with all the evidence I had gathered. I called her and told her to come home. When she arrived, I laid everything out, texts, videos, everything. She broke down, crying harder than before, begging me to forgive her, saying she was weak and stupid, that it was just sex, that she loved me and only me. I looked at her and felt nothing but cold fury. I told her I didn't believe her anymore, that her words were empty, that she had destroyed everything we had. She kept insisting she wanted to fix things, that she was going to end it with David, that she made a mistake and she'd do anything to make it right. But I knew better. I saw her desperation, her lies, her attempt to manipulate the situation. I told her she had to leave. I couldn't live with her anymore, not like this. I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore, anger, sadness, disgust. But I knew I couldn't stay, not after this. I told her she was out of my life now, that I needed to heal physically and emotionally. I was done being a fool. That night I slept alone, feeling a strange mixture of relief and despair. I'd lost my wife, my partner, the woman I'd trusted most in this world. But somehow I also felt a flicker of clarity. I realized I wasn't going to let her destroy what little self-respect I had left. I couldn't erase what happened overnight, but I could choose to rebuild. I knew I'd face a lot of pain and probably some regret, but I also knew I had to put myself first now. I had to focus on my recovery, my mental health, and figuring out how to move forward, alone if I had to. Because if I learned anything, it's that betrayal cuts deep, and sometimes love isn't enough to fix a broken heart. The days turned into weeks, and I kept my distance, trying to process everything that had happened. Honestly, I felt like I was walking around in a fog, angry, lost, and broken in ways I hadn't fully understood until now. I threw myself into my recovery, attending therapy sessions, doing exercises, trying to regain even a fraction of my strength. But inside, I was still replaying that night, those texts, her face when I confronted her. The betrayal was like a scar that refused to heal. Every day was a reminder that trust, once shattered, leaves a permanent mark. I'll admit, I had moments of doubt. The loneliness was overwhelming. I kept asking myself if I'd done the right thing by ending things, or if I was just overreacting, trying to punish her. But deep down, I knew the truth. I couldn't stay with someone who lied so blatantly, who used me when I was vulnerable and then abandoned me emotionally. She'd betrayed me in my weakest moment, after I fought so hard to come back from my stroke. That pain was worse than any physical injury I'd ever endured. I felt like I'd been betrayed not just by her, but by the entire idea of our marriage. One evening, I sat in the living room, scrolling through photos of us from happier times. I saw the memories, the trips, the birthdays, the quiet mornings. I missed that person, that man I'd been before all this happened. I wondered if I could ever find him again, or if I was permanently stained by her lies. I realized I had to start focusing on myself, on healing both physically and emotionally. Trusting people again, especially a partner, seemed impossible right now, but I knew I had to move on somehow. I reached out to a close friend who knew nothing about everything, just a guy I've known for years. I told him what happened, not because I wanted advice, but because I needed someone to listen. He didn't judge, just told me to take my time, that I deserved better than someone who could do this to me. That helped. It gave me some clarity. I was better off alone for now, healing and figuring out what I really wanted. I realized I shouldn't rush into anything. My body and mind were still recovering, and I needed to be patient with myself. As I moved through these days of reflection, I started to see things differently. I saw the betrayal for what it was, a reflection of her character, not mine. I was the one fighting to get better, to survive, to move forward. She was the one who threw everything away. That realization made me angry but also empowered. I didn't want to be that broken man forever, but I knew I had to start with acceptance. That's what I owe myself after everything I've been through. The betrayal might have broken my heart, but it also made me realize I was stronger than I thought. I've begun to let go of the hope that she'll come back, that she'll change. I don't think I can ever trust her again, and honestly, I don't want to. I'm learning to accept that some people aren't worth the pain they cause. The only person I can truly count on now is myself. I've started focusing on my therapy, my kids, rediscovering what makes me feel alive again, working slowly to rebuild my confidence, piece by piece. It's not easy, and some days are worse than others, but I know I have to keep moving forward. The thing I want anyone reading this to understand is that betrayal, especially from someone you love deeply, cuts so deep it feels like your soul is bleeding. But you can survive it. You can pick yourself up even if it takes time. I'm not perfect and I'm still healing, but I'm learning to accept that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes love is just a lie. And the only way to heal is to be honest with yourself, to face the pain head on, and to realize that you're better off without the people who hurt you. That's what I'm trying to do now, find peace, even if I have to do it alone. It's been a long road since I first found out about Lisa's affair. I won't lie, there were moments I thought I'd never recover from it. The betrayal was like a wound that refused to close, and I carried it with me everywhere, into my therapy, into my thoughts, into every quiet moment. But slowly, as I focused on myself, I began to piece things together. I realized that I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. I started rebuilding my life from the ground up, not just physically but emotionally. I learned that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, but the important thing is that I kept going. The most significant lesson I've learned through all this is that betrayal exposes the true character of the people around us. Lisa's actions showed who she really was: selfish, manipulative, and incapable of true loyalty. I don't hold any resentment for what she did anymore. I've accepted that some people aren't meant to stay in our lives. What matters now is how I choose to move forward. I've cut ties with her completely. There's no going back, and honestly, I don't want to. I deserve someone who respects me, who honors the vows we once shared, and who doesn't decide to cheat behind my back when I'm at my most vulnerable. I've also come to understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did. It's about freeing myself from the prison of anger and pain I was holding onto. Forgiving her doesn't mean I've forgotten or that I'm okay with what happened. It means I'm choosing to let go of the power her betrayal held over me. I'm choosing to focus on my healing, on my children, and on creating a future where trust and honesty aren't just words but the foundation of my life. I still get hurt sometimes. Those old wounds still sting. But I remind myself that I am stronger than my pain. I choose to heal, to forgive myself for feeling broken, and to trust that better days are ahead. Looking back, I see now that I was trapped in a cycle of pain and denial for too long. But breaking free was the best thing I ever did. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar understands that you're not alone. Betrayal cuts deep, and it's okay to feel broken for a while. But you also have the power to rebuild. You can choose your happiness, your peace, and your self-respect. Don't let someone else's betrayal define you. Take your time, grieve if you need to, but keep walking forward. One day, you'll look back and realize that your pain has made you stronger, wiser, and ready for a better life. So here I am, still healing, still learning, but finally moving on. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm done living in the shadow of her lies. I've reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. And that, for me, is the greatest victory of all.